guards, Azure Dragon's Sword Yu Yaliang, along with 2,000 bodyguards to be immediately dispatched to Zhejiang. His jaw dropped and it seemed like he was trembling in fear. His eyes widened because it seems there are more problems aside from losing the commission item. He bowed his head and thought that it appears the imperial family will personally deploy their forces simply to punish them, and if that turns out to be the case, the non-aggression treaty that the government has with the Miram won't be able to go into effect. Once a faction has been labeled an enemy of the imperial family, there is no way for them to escape unhurt. Meanwhile, Yu Yaliang, the leader of the embroidered uniform guard, was in charge of directing a large number of guards as they rode their horses in the direction where the minister of the provincial government resided. Afterwards, someone makes an announcement that Yu Yaliang has already come, and when that individual meets Waiso, the latter appears timid because he hides his face with his palm when they first greet each other. After Yaliang removed the head armor, he noticed Waiso had lost a significant amount of weight since the last time he saw him. On the other hand, Waiso lowered his head in shame and explained that he hadn't seen Yaliang in a long time. But seeing him now makes him feel embarrassed, and he can't bring himself to show his face because of it. Nevertheless, according to Yaliang, the Kowloon group was successful in obtaining the government commission despite the fact that they did not place first in the test for the government commission, and that Waiso would not have typically given his approval. Because of this, he believes that there must be some explanation behind it. In addition to this, Yaliang inquired of Waiso regarding whether or not he was compensated by the Kowloon group for the selection. Waiso, on the other hand, did not respond in any way, and did not raise his head. Rather, he continued to stare at the table. Because Yaliang noticed that Waiso didn't want to speak, he told him that the emperor had given him 7 days to find the memento, but that if he wasn't able to find the items of Her Highness within that time, not only the Kowloon group but even he wouldn't be able to escape undamaged. Waiso showed signs of worries, but he remained silent about it. After that, Yaliang suddenly rose up, and just as he was ready to leave, he turned around and apologized to Waiso. But Waiso continued to remain silent throughout the entire exchange. Waiso was anxious because he wanted to tell everyone everything, but the fact that his daughter's life is in Yom's hands prevents him from doing so. He jumped up all of a sudden and gave the appearance of being shivering with fear and rage because there is nothing he can do to save his daughter, and at the same time punish the entire Kowloon group. However, his eyes widened in response to the voice coming from behind him. Xinyun, the head of the Beacon clan, was standing there when he turned around to see who it was, and he was perplexed when he saw it was him. The latter advised him that if he wants to save her daughter and wreak havoc on the Kowloon group, then beginning at that time, he will do as Xinyun commanded him to do. The Beacon clan leader gathers his most trusted men for their meeting. Jinwoo said that the landslide that Xinyun predicted has actually occurred, while Zhuge asked their clan leader if perhaps he was the cause of the landslide to occur. But their clan leader reasoned that no mere man could manipulate nature because he just happened to have learned a bit of geomancy during the process of learning out formations. Zhuge suddenly laughs because he was expecting his answer since he was simply amazed by the wisdom their clan leader has, and he even laughs more when their clan leader wink at him. Furthermore, Xinyun questioned Jinwoo about the condition of the Hwang Rock clan as he turned to face him. In reaction to this, the leader of the faction stated that the circumstances around the Hwang Rock clan have seen a dramatic shift in recent days. Yom Seokchin was responsible for the death of Du Jung-ak, Du Ak-chil's father. Du Jung-ak had protested to the Kowloon gang before his own death. Following that, the Kowloon group dispatched their men to the Hwang Rock clan, and as of that time, they took control of it. When Xinyun inquired as to whether or not they had disbanded, Jinwoo said that although the Commission clan had not changed, there had been a transfer of ownership. He added that at the present time, Yang Jiao has been given the responsibility of acting as the chief of the clan temporarily. When Jinwoo mentioned that he had observed something out of the ordinary, everyone focused their attention on him, and they were intrigued by his statement. Jinwoo revealed to them that the wealth of the Hwang Rock clan is, for unknown reasons, being transferred to the Mount Huang sect, after their clan leader instructed him to spill it out. They were all taken aback and remarked that there must be a rationale behind it. But Xinyun grinned and said that it was apparent since they handed the Hwang Rock clan to the Mount Huang sect as the price for turning a blind eye towards them. Zhuge made the remark that Mount Huang's acts are the same as those of the Low Chaos sect. However, Gunho made the observation that it is likely that the Kowloon group holds a favorable opinion of them due to the fact that they handed the commission over to the Beacon clan in accordance with what Xinyun stated. Gung-ho also inquires as to whether it wouldn't be preferable to concentrate on the government commissions for the time being and grow the influence of such positions. However, Shin-won disagrees with what Gung-ho has said since there is a golden opportunity that is on their way, and they intend to make the most of that opportunity in order to prevail over their most formidable foe. They were all taken aback by the fact that they had the most formidable foe, and they were all intrigued about who it was. Because of this, Juge made the educated guess that it was the Mount Wang sect. However, he was incorrect, because Shin-won divulged the information that their most formidable adversary was the Kowloon group. Furthermore, when it was revealed that the Kowloon group was their most formidable adversary, they were all taken aback by the information. However, it appears that Jin-woo was rather perplexed, as it appears that he believed the Kowloon group was already their ally. For this reason, Shin-won explains to them that the Kowloon gang was involved in everything that took place around Yujin-sang, from the murder of Shin-won's father to the poisoning of the vice clan leader and Shin-won himself. In addition, Shin-won took things seriously and informed everyone that the search operation would be wrapping up in 6 days, and that the following day would mark the beginning of their conflict with the Kowloon group. Meanwhile, someone struck the individual, causing him to be flung to the ground. Ya Liang was the individual who struck the individual. The latter became quite enraged when the individual refused to let him enter the Kowloon residence, and it would appear that the guards of the Kowloon group were not feared to the embroidered uniform guard of the imperial family. He orders the remaining guards to make way as quickly as possible if they do not want to lose their lives. It appears that many of the guards are afraid of him, which is likely why they let him through. However, Yom was calmly sitting on his chair when Ya Liang suddenly opened the door of his dwelling. The leader of the Kowloon group seems not scared at the presence of Ya Liang because he just stared at the latter, but didn't say anything when Ya Liang asked him if he was Yom Seokchun. The latter noticed that Ya Liang was releasing energy, and it was the 10 worldly supremes, who are said to be the strongest in the current Muram. Ya Liang was one of them, and he was the undeniable trump card of the imperial family, and he would die if he slipped up, so he abruptly knelt on the ground and greeted Ya Liang and introduced his name. Yom was informed by Ya Liang that the government commissions were intended to be selected through a test in the beginning. Nevertheless, Yom appears to have monopolized them for the last 10 years. However, Yom reasoned that he just complied with the request of the provincial minister because he was concerned about the possibility of that commission failing due to the subpar quality of the commission clan in Zhejiang. But it appears that Ya Liang did not trust him, and even yelled at him, telling him that his comments were gibberish because if his talents were excellent, then how would the situation occur? Yom was the target of Ya Liang's clenched fist, and he even pointed his weapon in his direction. However, Yom explains, much to Ya Liang's surprise, that even though it's not intended to be an excuse, everything happened because their provincial minister Kang Taeha was fabricated in that particular commission route. As a result of this, Ya Liang became enraged when he noticed that Yom was trying to place all of the blame on the provincial minister. But Yom reasoned that he was only stating the truth, and all of the conversations he had with the provincial minister are documented in the records of the meeting. If Ya Liang is unable to convince himself to believe Yom, then Yom believes that Ya Liang must have viewed the record of the meeting for himself. On the other hand, Ya Liang is at a loss for words due to her shock that Yom may be telling the truth, in addition to the fact that he has proof. Afterward, they went to check the record of the meeting, and it turned out that everything Yom had said was accurate according to the book that he was holding. Yom, who was standing behind him, turned and questioned him whether or not the information that was written on the book was sufficient to prove his innocence. But Ya Liang ignored him and didn't even turn to look at him. Instead, he claimed that in 6 days, if Yom are not able to uncover Her Highness's memento, he would pledge that upon all the honor that he has accumulated until that point to completely excavate everything of Yom's deeds. Then Ya Liang turned around to go. But right before Ya Liang was about to leave, Yom pleaded with him to keep the unneeded feelings that arise from his personal relationship and keep them separate from the business of the government. However, Ya Liang ignored his statement once again before leaving the room. In addition, when Ya Liang left Yom, the latter was so angry that he clenched his teeth and suddenly slammed his fist down on the table in front of him, which resulted in the table breaking. The group vice leader suddenly appeared before him and inquired about the next step they should take. As a response to this, Yom gives the group vice leaders instructions to get ready for the worst-case scenario, and as soon as the orders are delivered, he must wipe all the evidence. The group from Kowloon was hard at work excavating the site of the landslide that had occurred earlier, which was the location where their leader of the Strong Dragon Squad, Jun Guang, and their subordinates had been buried alive. Kyung-ho was busy giving his comrades instructions to continue digging in the dirt so that they may find Her Highness's memento regardless of the circumstances. "Can't you dig any deeper and wider?" he added. "They have no choice but to find it because their very lives depend on the item in question." His subordinates did their best to dig, some used shovels, while others dug with pickaxes. They were all hot and exhausted, but they had to keep searching because if they didn't discover the thing they were looking for, they would all be subject to harsh consequences. However, two people appear to be exhausted and are sweating heavily. They both have furrowed brows and an unhappy expression on their faces due to the fact that they are martial artists, and not moles for doing the labor. They are referred to as demons of the blood sect for the simple fact that they have the ability to easily defeat Liang and the rest of the embroidered uniform guards. Kyung-ho overheard everything and became enraged because the two people think that they didn't know that they have been shoveling all this time because they were unaware of that fact. The reason was because in the hastily assembled monthly conference, it was suggested that their group leader's position should be removed. And if the matters isn't properly dealt with, he clenched his fist and gritted his teeth because if that happened, their foothold in the organization will quickly disappear. And despite the fact that they sacrifice a great deal for the cause of their sect on a regular basis. Afterward, Kyung-ho took a glance at his fellow soldiers and noticed that it appeared as though they were idling away their time. As a result, he gave them orders to dig further deeper because they don't have a lot of time to find the objects because Liang gave them only 6 days to do so. In addition, Kyung-ho were surprised when someone spoke behind him saying that he was working quite hard. He was confused when he turned around to see who it was. It was the leader of the Beacon clan, Xinyun. Furthermore, Xinyun told Kyung-ho that he was there to assist because it appears that the Kowloon group is in quite a bit of difficulty. Even though he appeared bewildered, Kyung-ho stated that it had a profound effect on him to witness Xinyun travel all the way for the Kowloon group. Despite this, Xinyun made the observation that there hasn't been much progress made in the search for the item. Kyung-ho reasoned that despite the fact that they had been searching for the item around the clock for the past few days, they hadn't been able to uncover even the slightest shred of evidence that it was still there. But he is unable to complete his sentence, and to his astonishment, Xinyun interrupts him and says that he was about to notify the group vice leader that it is acceptable to remove everyone and take a break. His eyes widen in horror when Xinyun shows him the object that they had been searching for day and night. The latter also explains that he found the memento on his way there. Furthermore, Liang was walking toward to meet the emperor, then he abruptly knelt to introduce himself. He stated that he had come to deliver the memento of Her Highness as ordered by His Majesty, the Emperor. Then he handed over the memento to the Emperor and apologized because the edges had been slightly damaged due to the landslide. In addition, the Emperor took the memento and said that it's alright if it is slightly damaged as long as it was found. The Emperor also said that there were issues that occurred from a natural disaster unavoidable by man. He felt that he needed to apologize and was shameful for being so furious when his subject worked hard to unearth and find the memento. Afterwards, he gave Liang the instruction to make sure the embroidered uniform guard overheard what he was about to say, which was that he will grant liquor and meat to uphold those who have worked hard, so they must prepare for a banquet. In addition to this, he bestows a message that was penned on paper before asking Liang the name of the person who discovered the keepsake. In answer, Liang mentioned that Liu Xinyun, the head of the Beacon Clan Commission, was the individual who found the memento. Meanwhile, every single member of the Kowloon group was seated on a chair in front of a lengthy table that included a variety of snacks and beverages. After spending all day and night laboring to unearth the item, it would appear that they were enjoying themselves after their ordeal. Everyone was having a good time. They kept drinking booze, talking about random topics, and laughing at things that were completely pointless. Xinyun's cup was being filled with liquor while the vice group leader spoke to him, telling him that the Kowloon group is really grateful to him. However, Xinyun stated that there is no need for such a pleasant phrase because they are in a position to seek amicable connections with the Kowloon group, and it is natural for the affair of the Kowloon group to also be an affair of the Beacon Commission clan. Furthermore, Xinyun's words made Kyung-ho feel grateful, and he also reported that their leader was highly applauding Xinyun's favor as well and was hoping to meet him once the banquet was finished. It would appear that the latter was quite eager to talk to the head of Kowloon. Because of this, he disclosed to the group's vice leader that one of his goals was to meet and speak with the head of Kowloon. On the other hand, based on the look that he gave Xinyun when he was staring at him, it appears that Kyung-ho had some reservations about him. Perhaps he reasoned that even if it was unquestionable that Xinyun was on their side, the latter still possessed a great deal of dubious qualities, and it was necessary to be cautious around him. "Heed your attention," exclaimed Liang. He was preparing to make an announcement and was holding a scroll in his hand. Since everyone was seated, it was decided that he would deliver the handwritten message that had been penned by their Majesty, the Emperor, before the meal was finished. Therefore, he demands that everyone show the appropriate amount of respect. After that, he looked for the leader of the Beacon clan, Xinyun, to come forward. When he did, Xinyun rose up, moved near Yaoliang, and kneeled down on the ground. According to what was written on the scroll, Xinyun's exemplary heart has moved heaven and created a miracle. Because of the memento, the spirit of Chohai, which has been wandering among the 9 springs, will finally be able to find peace, and the Emperor will experience unfathomable joy as a result. If the Emperor does not lavishly reward the person who made everything possible for him as a result of their undying loyalty, then it is not appropriate to refer to him as an emperor. Therefore, with this document, the Emperor announces to his honorable subject Xinyun that he will provide Xinyun one of the things that he desires. Regardless of what it is, he should voice his wish. After that, when Dyung-ho and his subordinates heard what their emperor had written on the scroll, they immediately dropped their jaws in astonishment and were shocked. Others couldn't believe that Xinyun had a wish that the emperor would grant for finding the memento. Others couldn't believe that the scroll had been written by the emperor himself. Afterwards, Xinyun was instructed by Yaoliang to speak about his desire, which may be a palace, grandeur, or the study of martial arts. However, Yaoliang does not name any of things as being Xinyun's goal since there is something else that Xinyun wants. Then Yaoliang urged him to say whatever it was that he desired to say. Because of this, Xinyun says that what he really wants is the restoration of justice, and if he begs His Majesty, the Emperor, to tackle the issues of drug trafficking and human smuggling that plague Zhejiang, he will. The statements made by the leader of the Beacon clan took Yaoliang by surprise. Because of this, he inquired once more about the drug dealing and human smuggling that he had described. Xinyun vouched that the information was accurate and that it was in line with what he had stated. On the other hand, the angry vice leader of the group clenched his teeth and wrinkled his forehead as he reacted to what had just happened. He cursed Xinyun for stabbing him in the back, and it was later found out that he was the one responsible for those incidents that took place in jail. The irritation that he was experiencing caused him to tighten his fist, and it appeared as though he intended to punch Xinyun at that very moment. Nevertheless, doing so would have been too risky. He is unable to continue to remain in that location and must rapidly leave in order to provide their superior with an account of what has taken place. Therefore, Dyung-ho proceeded to walk, and as he was ready to go, he yelled at his subordinates and other swordsmen to get out of his way. However, he is unable to continue walking because Yaoliang suddenly yells at him and instructs him to come to a stop. Afterwards, a significant number of guards now had their swords pointed in the direction of the vice group leader, because starting then, until Yaoliang gave out his orders, no one was allowed to leave the place, and he was required to stay where he was. As a direct consequence of this, Dyung-ho became quite irate. Xinyun was confronted by Yaoliang, who informed him that none of the things he had spoken could be ignored easily. Then he asked once again the leader of the Beacon Commission clan if Xinyun could honestly accept responsibility for his statement. In response to this, Xinyun, who was grinning broadly from ear to ear, stated that of course he could accept responsibility, and that not a single thing he said was a lie. And because of that, the group vice leader turned to him and was enraged. Furthermore, the Beacon Commission clan head is confronted once more by Yaoliang, who appears to be enraged. He asks how he will prove his words and how he knew about those crimes. In answer, Xinyun says that the subordinate who attempted to seize control of the Beacon Commission clan is the same individual who poisoned both Xinyun's father and brother and who utilizes the medicine that Xinyun was referring to. In addition to this, he said that he witnessed the individual in question use the drugs to manipulate his younger brother like a puppet in front of his very eyes, and he claimed that he acquired reports of human trafficking from the GM family who were covertly allied with him. And last but not least, he was successful in identifying those individuals who were truly to blame for everything that had transpired, and it just so happens that they were there in that precise location. After then, the group vice leader's eyes widened and Dyung-ho clenched his teeth as soon as he heard all that had taken place. Moreover, the leader of the Beacon clan is questioned once more by Yaoliang about who could be responsible for the crime. As a response, Xinyun exposes that the culprit was the entire Kowloon group, and as a direct result of this information, the group vice leader abruptly yells at his other comrades to flee the scene. But before they could make their getaway, Yaoliang gave orders to his uniformed guards to capture them. As a result, they were currently encircled by a large number of guards, each of whom had their sword pointing in the direction of the entire Kowloon group. In addition, the vice group leader turned to the leader of the embroidered uniform guards and yelled that Xinyun's statement is a false accusation. He claimed that Xinyun was blinded by his own greed and that he was trying to claim the sovereignty of Zhejiang. He also claimed that Xinyun is not in possession of any evidence other than his hollow remarks, which are the only thing he has. He pointed his finger at Yao Liang and questioned him whether he honestly believed the Kowloon group would evade the eyes of the provincial minister if they had truly expanded their authority through heinous crimes. He abruptly jerks his head around to look for the provincial minister and shouted at him, "If you can hear me, you have to hurry up and say something." On the other hand, Xinyun suddenly interjects himself and questions the group vice leader, demanding to know if the latter truly believes that he could get out of the predicament by threatening the provincial minister. Xinyun is going to show him the evidence because he expressed an interest in doing so. After that, the group vice leader turned around and was confused when he saw a lady being protected by Ha Rin and Juge. Yao Liang was astounded when he saw the lady since he knew that she was the daughter of the provincial minister, Lady Dan Yi. The latter noticed her father when Waiso put his hand on her shoulder to support her. However, Xinyun reportedly claimed that the Kowloon group was holding the daughter of the provincial minister as a hostage. Xinyun, however, is unable to finish his sentence because the provincial minister has intervened and continued Xinyun's statements by saying that the Kowloon group was able to plot everything by threatening him, and he confirmed that everything of the Beacon clan leader's words are genuine. Because he wanted to protect his daughter, he listened to the Kowloon group at first, but not anymore. When he realized that the Kowloon clique was to blame for their plight, it infuriated him and he exploded with wrath. In addition to this, he stated that today, ever since Juge and Ha Rin had rescued his daughter, he was at last able to tell the whole truth. On the other hand, after the group vice leader heard the statement made by the provincial minister, in which he placed all of the blame on the Kowloon group, it became clear that there was no sense in defending their sect because everyone now knew the truth about the Kowloon group. He was furious and clenched his teeth in a show of his fury, but he quickly gathered himself and ordered his allies to draw their swords and launch an assault on the foes as soon as possible. After that, all of the members of the Kowloon group ran to the uniform guards, but Yao Liang roared at the vanguard and ordered them to arrest all of the members of the Kowloon group and to kill anyone who resisted. As a direct consequence of this, a large number of individuals were now engaging in violent conflict with one another. On the side of the Kowloon group, individuals pierced their swords in an effort to stay alive and evade the wrath of the embroidered uniform guards, whereas on the side of the embroidered uniform guards, individuals pierced their swords in an effort to apprehend the Kowloon group. Both factions have no qualms about cutting their swords in the direction of their rival. However, one of the uniform guards noticed that the Kowloon group was attempting to flee, which prompted the uniform guards to dash towards them in an effort to arrest them. In addition, even Yao Liang brandished his swords against the Kowloon group, and the group vice leader of the Kowloon group clenched his teeth in response to seeing Yao Liang. Since he is of the opinion that he will be killed in the event if he engage in combat, he comes to the conclusion that he must leave the scene immediately. On the other hand, Yao Liang became aware that the vice group leader was engaging in activity, and he immediately yelled at everyone to move out of the way. After that, there was a significant explosion that occurred. It was a lucky escape for Yao Liang and the uniform guards, who were able to evade the explosion by utilizing his weapon. However, Meng Junho was nowhere to be found after the explosion, which is why Yao Liang unexpectedly directed the uniform guards to instantly follow after him. However, he is unable to complete his statement since Xinyun has already dashed off in pursuit of Junho. Yom Chenseok extended an invitation to Chung Sung and other recently initiated members of their sect to join him for a drink. On that happy day, he instructed everyone to drink to the happiness in their hearts and enjoy themselves. Everyone appeared to be delighted and content due to the fact that they were given the opportunity to drink with the leader of Kowloon. Yom was told by Chung Su that he didn't know how to repay him for all the grace that he showed him by believing that he could gain such tremendous strength without any training or anything else. Chung Su, who appears to likewise obtain authority from their commander, is supported by other members of the group. They consider it to be the chance of a lifetime that was presented to them because they listened to and followed the advice of their disciple brother and the leader of the sect. Don't mention it, uttered Yom while drinking from his cup. The latter also told the newly initiated members that they are automatically brothers the instant they enter the sect, despite the fact that their levels of order and chaos may differ. Their sect will help the Mount Huang sect in rising within the upper echelons of the Murim Union with all of their heart and soul. As a result of this, Chung Su will be grateful to him for the rest of his life and will never forget everything he has done for the Mount Huang sect. The new members have also expressed that they intend to play an active part in supporting both their group leader and the sect as a whole. On the other hand, Chung Su told that he couldn't help but be surprised that the person was a member of the sect as well, and if their group leader had told that fact earlier, he would have entered the sect without any hesitation. Yom put down his cup and explained that it's one of the greatest secrets of the sect, so he pleaded to the new members to be more understanding. Furthermore, that person already knows about Chung Su's entry to the sect and is very pleased about it. He also said that the person has requested to meet at a later time to drink, so there should be a summon coming soon. The new members seemed surprised and were delighted by the statement of Yom. That's why the latter told them that they don't have to be impatient and just enjoy the drink. One of the new members was about to say something, but they were all surprised by a loud noise. Yom, who also heard the loud noise, was confused, and when he realized that it was coming from the outside, he abruptly stood up and opened the window. Furthermore, Yom widened his eyes in shock when he saw from afar that there was an explosion and found out that it was red smoke. He suddenly thinks of Mang Dyung-ho and asks himself if the explosion came from him. The new members seem worried and keep asking him what happened, and due to the annoyance that he felt, Yom releases a tremendous force that does a red light, and as a result, those new members seem to be struggling with something since they were all sweating. Afterward, Yom's subordinate ran up to him and asked if he's seen the red smoke. Yom acknowledged that the explosion was a signal coming from Dyung-ho to his subordinate. He gave his subordinate the order to immediately activate the formation, remove all of the evidence and witnesses, and then retreat to their headquarters. He also instructed them to instantly assemble half of the attack squad, head outside their estate, and gain time by attacking people in order to prevent their adversary from entering their area. "Yes, sir," exclaimed the subordinates. Yom issues orders for the newly recruited members to gather all of their weapons and get ready for battle. Those new members appear to be terrified, which is why they question Yom about what is going on and why they need to get ready for a conflict. And Chung Su also questions their leader about whether or not he seriously considers engaging in combat with the Azure Dragon Blade. However, his eyes widen in surprise as Yom turns to him with a malicious expression and orders him to keep his mouth shut. Following that, Yom walks to a closet and opens the door to it. When the new recruits, including Chung Su, found out what was hidden behind the closet, their reactions were predictable: shock and awe. There was a violent thunderbomb inside. They were all intrigued by the idea that the most taboo items in the martial arts world could be found there. Chung Su also mentioned that there is not just one violent thunderbomb, but rather 3 of them. On the other hand, Yom greeted the new members with a nefarious grin on his face and informed them that he believed that 3 violent thunderbombs would be sufficient to eradicate the city entirely and leave no traces behind. When the statement was made by their group leader, all of the new members were as stunned as they are currently sweating. Yom, on the other hand, overheard someone say something from the outside, and it seems familiar to him. Because of this, he threw open the window in an unexpected manner and yelled, "Mang Dyung-ho, is that you?" However, his eyes widened in shock when he saw his numerous subordinates who seemed scared and wielding their swords against Dyung-ho, who appeared to be like a monster and was screaming in pain. Dyung-ho was calling for help, but it was too late because Shin Woo struck him using his sword and cut him in half. As a result, all the subordinates of Yom were shocked when they saw how Dyung-ho cut in half in just one strike. On the other hand, Shin Woon was standing in front of the lifeless body of Dyung-ho, and his one foot was stepping on the corpse while looking at Yom, and said that the mist is a bit irritating. But it's not enough for him to be concerned, then form a grin on his face. "Don't you agree?" Kowloon group leader Yom Chin-seok, he added. However, Yom's subordinate was yelling to their fellow soldiers that their adversary was by himself. Thus they should all go in formation and kill their adversary with simultaneous blows. After that, they began to approach Shin Woon while simultaneously pointing all of their weapons in his direction. However, Shin Woon was not alone himself, and the news makes him feel a little bit downcast. Because of this, he immediately snapped his finger to perform the necromancy, which summoned a large number of skeleton warriors. When one of the Kowloon group's members saw the skeleton warriors that Shin Woon had summoned, he was awestruck, and his eyes expanded in response. In spite of the fact that he was shaking with dread and had a strong grip on his sword, the individual screamed out and demanded to know what those things were. Then one of them responds that those things in question are skeletons. They were all looking at Shin Woon, who was standing still while surrounded by his many skeleton warriors. Some of them claimed that they had never seen or heard anything like that, while others claimed that they couldn't believe it and that it must be the advent of the messenger of the underworld. The fear that each and every one of the Kowloon group's warriors felt caused them to break out in cold sweats. On the other hand, Shin Woon is able to call forth a maximum of 80 skeletons at this time, but he will soon be able to raise that number to hundreds. Shin Woon believes that 60 should be sufficient for the Kowloon group warriors, though. On the other hand, every single one of the Kowloon group warriors was astounded, and they all turned to look at the individual who suddenly materialized before them and demanded what they were doing. The person was On Ho-jun, and was the Crouching Dragon squad leader. The individual encourages the warriors of Kowloon to not be scared of the piles of bones because they have the advantage of numbers. He gave the Kowloon warrior the orders to employ all of the demonic arts and launch an assault. Furthermore, it would appear that Ho-jun has finally been successful in motivating the warriors of the Kowloon group, as they are currently charging towards Xinyun alongside his skeletons. On the other hand, the latter gives orders to all of his skeleton warriors to eliminate each and every one of the Kowloon group. After that, a large number of skeleton warriors headed towards the Kowloon group and engaged in battle with them. However, due to the fact that those skeleton warriors were all transcendent, it was simple for them to win the fight against the warriors of the Kowloon group. Some of the skeletons severed their opponent's skull with their swords, while others pierced their opponent's body with their swords, and yet others sliced their opponent in half, and Ho-jun witnessed the entire event. He couldn't believe those bizarre creatures were training in martial arts, and for achieving such a great deal with such a limited amount. In addition, because he was so irritated, Ho-jun clenched his teeth, furrowed his forehead, and started to sweat as a result of his behavior. Everything was amazing, and Ho-jun had the thought that it was possible that each and every one of those skeleton warriors could be transcendent experts. If that were the case, then the Ho-jun's group would have absolutely no chance of winning the battle at this rate. And if that isn't the case, he has no other option except to use the blessing that the leader of the blood sect bestowed upon him. After that, he directed his finger on his palm, and after that, a significant explosion took place. He had no idea that even his allies would perish in the explosion while shouting for aid. But Ho-jun didn't bother to pay attention to them because it seemed like all he cared about was beating Xinyun and those skeletons. But his eyes widened when he saw what appeared to be a skeleton in front of him, and it appears that even Xinyun was not impacted by the explosion. Xinyun questioned Ho-jun about whether or not he truly believed he would be able to change the course of events with such a modest explosion that had no negative impact on them. Because of the explosion, Ho-jun was able to eliminate all of his own troops. The latter appears to be trembling in fury, then he sees his comrades racing towards him in an attempt to aid him. But Ho-jun ignored him and transformed into a creature that resembled a black mantis in an instant, and used its front leg to slash the necks of his comrades. All of a sudden, the heads of his allies were severed and tossed up in the air. In addition to this, he gives the order for all of the Kowloon warriors to launch an assault on Xinyun at the same time, and he warns that anyone who escapes would meet their end at his hands. On the other hand, Xinyun let out a sigh when he saw Ho-jun became a monster and guessed that it's a black mantis, then commented that insect types are not his favorite, but it doesn't matter because he abruptly lifted his hand, then summoned another skeleton. And in an instant, the black mantis vanished, and as a result, the rest of the Kowloon warriors dropped their jaws and seemed shocked when they saw that the soldiers who had already died became exactly like those monsters. However, Xinyun formed a grin on his face and commented not to curse him for being unfair because there's nothing he can do since that was his power. He looks on the upper window to look for the Kowloon group leader Yeom Chun-seok and ask if he agreed with him. Afterwards, Xinyun was a bit surprised when he saw Chung-su finally came down and wielded his sword while pointing it towards him. The latter told Xinyun that he still had plenty of things to pay him back for, and though he may not understand the trickery that Xinyun was pulling, it has to end now. In response, Xinyun told Chung-su that it would be better for him too. The latter seems confused when Xinyun told him that there's someone who wanted to see him first. His eye widens and sweat starts to form on his face when Xinyun releases an energy. Afterward, the status window appears and notifies Kang that he has satisfied the hidden criteria. It also informs that the skeleton commander spiraling lunar sword sage, Myung Jayung, is being called by its own will, and that it was releasing the fury that it had been holding back. In addition, the status pane revealed that the values of Skeleton Commander Spiraling Lunar Sword Mage Myung Jayung's statistics have improved by a factor of 200%. After then, in the blink of an eye, the skeleton of Myung Jayung materialized out of thin air and started putting off an incredible amount of force. In addition to this, Xinyun interrogates the skeleton commander about whether or not he sees everything, which demonstrates that Xinyun was telling the truth the entire time. After that, he gives the skeleton commander the order to personally eliminate his dumb disciple, just as he had promised. In addition, the skeleton commander, also known as the O-Sword Sage, assumes a fighting stance and appears to be prepared for battle. The title of Sword Sage is considered to be the highest distinction that can be bestowed upon a martial artist in the entire field of martial arts, and it is not given to just anyone. The title of Sword Sage can be earned, but only by individuals who have the most admirable of personalities and are skilled in the appropriate forms of martial arts. The spiraling lunar sword sage, Myung-Jiang, was still considered to be among the most esteemed sword sages up to this point when those prerequisites were met. In addition to this, Chung-Su appears afraid while looking at Myung-Jiang, who was not approaching him and was not delivering such a significant amount of power. When he realized that the energy that the skeleton possessed was the same energy that belonged to the spiraling lunar sword sage, he was so shocked that his mouth dropped and he started to sweat. But he was confused because he was able to sense the energy of the sword sage from the skeleton. On the other hand, Xin-Woon labeled Chung-Su as an idiot because he had failed to realize that the skeleton that was standing right in front of him was actually his master. He also stated that Chung-Su's corruption has spread all the way to the underworld, compelling the spiraling lunar sword sage to reappear in the realm of the mortals, and that he is obligated to show the sword sage the utmost respect because of this. But Chung-Su appeared to be perplexed, and it appeared that he was at a loss for what to do. However, the skeleton commander suddenly opens his mouth and asserts that the incident was his doing. Because of his shortcomings, the Mount Huang sect has become tainted. Hence, he must rectify the situation himself with individuals who are steeped in evil and responsible for tainting the sect. After that, he assumed his fighting posture and prepared himself to engage in the fight. Afterwards, Chung-Su was infuriated and refused to believe that the skeletal commander standing in front of him was actually his master. Even the skeleton commander and Xin-Woon received an order from him to stop lying, and he vowed that he would never allow himself to be misled by any simple wizardry. The skeleton commander in front of them was not the spiraling lunar sword sage, rather, he was merely a pile of bones, and Xin-Woon was making fun of them for telling lies. He encouraged his allies not to fall for the trick because the skeleton commander was not the spiraling lunar sword sage. Xin-Woon let out a sigh as he expected how stubborn Chung-Su was being. The latter also stated that even if the skeleton were to turn out to be the true sword sage, they should not be worried. When he says this, he smiles savagely since they already possess power that is far superior to that of the skeleton. Thus there is nothing that they should be afraid of, regardless of whether or not the sword sage has ascended. Afterwards, Xin-Woon was expecting everything Chung-Su had to say. Because of this, he instantly issued orders to the skeleton commander to carry out all of his commands exactly as he desired. When the skeleton commander overheard Xin-Woon say such things, he immediately made a beeline for Chung-Su and the other members of his group. The skeleton commander first confronts an elder with long hair, and as it swings its sword towards the elders, a light emanates from the blade of the skeleton commander's sword. As a consequence of this, the elderly man with the long hair was struck on the chest, and blood began to pour out of his body. The skeleton commander took a blow to the neck from another elder, however it does not appear that the blow actually hit the skeleton. Following that, the skeleton commander turned to confront the elder, at which point he took a number of blows, which ultimately led to the elder's body being hacked to pieces. Afterwards, the skeleton commander is confronted by two elders at the same time, but he quickly leaps away to escape being hit by a sword that is being brandished by one of the elders. After that, the skeleton commander thrust its sword into the chest of one of the elders, then abruptly swung its blade and unleashed a tremendous amount of force towards its adversary. Because of the enormous amount of force that the skeleton commander let off, the two elderly people were expelled as a direct consequence of this. In addition to this, Chung-Su masked his face in order to protect himself from the dazzling light emanating from the skeleton commander's sword. He gave off the impression of being terrified and couldn't believe that his allies, who were all seniors from the Mount Huang sect and had gained powers from the Blood sect, had been defeated so easily. When he looked around, he was shocked to see that all of his companions had been put to death by the skeleton commander, who had claimed to be his master and a sword sage. He considered the possibility that it was the genuine sword sage. However, Chung-Su seemed trembling. He realized that it was impossible for him to take on the skeleton commander by himself now that all of his allies had been eliminated from the fight. He clenched his teeth in frustration as a result of the fact that the strength of the demonic sect that Yomchiaxian had given to him was still insufficient. However, there is no other option for him, and he must use all of his abilities to prevail over the skeleton commander and Xin-Woon. After then, he lets out such a large amount of force that it causes the whites of his eyes to turn crimson, and the veins in his face to become visible. In a single moment, he mutated into a hideous creature, complete with pointed claws and teeth. Chung-Su is now able to sense that his power is growing as a consequence of the fact that he has finally gotten the power that the blood cult promised to give to him through Yomchenseok. Since he has finally achieved the goal of becoming one with the demonic beast, there is no longer any reason to be terrified of him. He looks into Xinyun and the skeleton commander because he intends to destroy both of them to the point where there is not even a shred of evidence left of them. After that, a red glow began to emanate from his eyes, and as a result, his entire body began to dash towards the skeleton commander, then abruptly jumped to strike it. On the other hand, the skeleton commander was unruffled, and it appeared as though it was waiting for Chung Su to launch an assault. However, before Chung Su could get within striking distance of the skeleton commander, the latter triggered the spiraling lunar and blasted a massive force out of its body. Chung Su was able to observe this force. After that, the skeleton commander activated his sword god and suddenly thrust his sword forward with an incredible amount of force in an attempt to cut Chung Su. And as a direct consequence of this, the great force that struck Chung Su pierced his body, causing his blood to spurt out from the wound, followed by an explosion. On the other hand, Yomchan-seok appeared to be monitoring Xinyun and the skeleton commander as they fought while his eyes were fixed on the two of them. In addition, Chung Su's life was ruined, and just before he dropped to the ground lifeless, he came to the realization that it was the genuine power of the Mount Huang sect. Then he fell on the ground. However, since Chung Su has been eliminated, it would appear that there is only one rival left, and that rival was Yomchan-seok. Xinyun was making his way toward a spiral staircase in order to engage in combat with Yomchan-seok. When he reached the top of the staircase, he spotted a partition, and it appeared that Yom was behind it since a significant amount of energy was being released. He is aware of an enormous demonic presence, which is why he brandishes his sword and suddenly slashes it across the divider, which causes an explosion. After that, Yomchan-seok slowly emerged from behind the smoke and informed Xinyun that he was late because he had been waiting for the latter. Xinyun and Yomchan-seok were both putting out a tremendous amount of power when the latter approached the Beacon clan leader and claimed that he had been watching his fight. However, Yom was curious as to why the Beacon clan leader had walked all the way up to his abode without his skeletal monster. In addition to that, he stated that based on that action, it would appear that there is a limit to the sorcery that is utilized to dominate those skeletal monsters. Xinyun's eyes opened in surprise as he saw the 3 violent thunder bombs behind Yomchan-seok, so he asked the latter why they were there. On the other hand, Yomchan-seok remarked that the leader of the Beacon clan is very perceptive, but he does not wish to explain himself. Instead, he cautioned Xinyun that if he does not leave the city within the next 30 minutes, Xinyun and everything else will vanish without a trace, and no matter how skilled a con artist he was, there is nothing he can do about the powerful thunder bombs. It would appear that Xinyun did not pay attention to what the other person was saying. Perhaps he was trying to come up with a way to stop those violent thunder bombs. In addition, Yomchan-seok urges Xinyun to seek forgiveness from the demon god for all of the wrongdoings he has committed due to his lack of knowledge, and to follow the demon god because he is the only one who knows how to extend his life. Only under those circumstances can Yomchan-seok be able to ignore the crimes that Xinyun has perpetrated. But he was unable to continue speaking, and he was astonished when Xinyun abruptly yelled at him and told him to stop. On the other hand, Xinyun presses Yomchan-seok with the question, why do fools like you try to sell your no-name god whenever you're about to lose? But he provides an immediate response to his own query and speculates that it may be the extent of those cultist fools. But Yomchan-seok suddenly exclaims that he was not purchasing him, so he is unable to complete his statements. It appeared as though Yomchan-seok was unable to take any more of the insult that Xinyun was providing. He furrowed his brow, he tightened his teeth while veins could be seen on his forehead. And then all of a sudden, he brandished his sword towards Xinyun, which resulted in a large explosion on his residence. And as Xinyun was able to avoid his strike, afterwards, Yomchan-seok told Xinyun that in the end, the latter chose the poison chalice for himself, but it's fine because it's better that way since he was able to get rid of him completely. But Xinyun just smiled at him and asked the Kowloon group leader if he believed he can defeat him, because if he will just kill him, it will be too easy for him. And because of that statement, Yomchan-seok seething in anger as he widened his eyes and abruptly struck his sword and yelling that he will tear Xinyun into shreds. But Xinyun was combative and also wielded his sword towards Yomchan-seok, and luckily the latter avoided it. They keep attacking each other as their sword collides and creates lights that lit the place. But Yomchan-seok seems confused because he notices that Xinyun was not getting fatigued at all and he was getting stronger as he fights him. But the power of the blood sect should be far superior than anyone, and it doesn't make any sense because even those who have attained ascending art But he can't continue his sentence because Xinyun suddenly stopped and said that it was over. In addition, Yomchan-seok's eyes widened in shock when Xinyun summoned his bone storm. Then in an instant, numerous skeletons were heading towards him. He was dazed and seemed confused while doing nothing when numerous skeletons approached him and slashed their sword against him. And as a result, he fell on the ground kneeling while his arms were cut. He was seething in anger while looking at the Beacon clan leader who was walking towards him. Yomchan-seok cursed at Xinyun. That's why the latter asked him why it is always the weak ones cursing after getting defeated. The Beacon clan leader was grateful to Yom because he was able to buy time to get rid of those violent thunder bombs. On the other hand, Yomchan-seok switched his attention to the location of the destructive thunder bombs and was taken aback when he realized that he had failed to notice that the leader of the Beacon clan had already removed the bombs. Because of this, he became infuriated. And then he went to Xinyun and demanded to know, for the last time, just what Xinyun has against him, as well as why he had done all of this. He continued by asking, just why? But when Xinyun told him that he was not attempting to stop him, but rather that he was trying to stop the blood sect, his eyes widened in amazement. The Beacon clan leader also indicated that Yomchan-seok was just the beginning of it, and that he planned to wipe out the entire blood sect, the people responsible for bringing ruin to the world, in the future. And finally, your boss, even that snake-eyed sect leader. He added, Yomchan-seok appears to be in great fear after learning that Xinyun was familiar with both their blood sect and the Snake Eye sect head. It would appear that he has no other option but to try the very last thing he can think of. Suddenly, he lets forth a tremendous amount of energy while also plotting to take Xinyun's head by any means necessary. The latter was taken aback when he saw Yomchan-seok gradually transform into a massive monster with sharp fangs and a head that was on fire. Yom became the executioner of the requiem for the eighth disaster, the Balrog. After Yomchan-seok had completed his transformation and made use of the blessing that the blood sect had bestowed upon him, there was a massive explosion that took place within his home. Thankfully, Xinyun was able to dodge the explosion by moving backwards. The latter scrutinizes the big beast that is standing in front of him, who possesses enormous arms and legs. Its teeth and nails are both sharp, and it is emitting flames all over its body at the moment. Balrog is a being that existed in the generation before Kang. Aside from what he had read in the book, he did not have any prior experience with the tactic that Balrog could employ for him to be able to defeat the monster. However, it was an interesting experience for Kang to meet the Balrog. After that, he gives the order for his skeleton warriors to commence their assault on the enemy. Furthermore, a large number of skeleton warriors were making their way towards the Balrog, which was poised to receive their assault. But Balrog gives off an air of power because it was simple for him to slash its claws to launch a counterattack against those skeleton warriors, and as a consequence, other skeleton warriors had their heads severed. Other skeleton warriors had their heads grabbed and pulled out of their bodies. Other skeleton warriors had their entire bodies slammed against the ground, and other skeleton warriors were set ablaze by Balrog's flame. In addition to this, the massive body of Balrog was emitting such a significant quantity of flame that it was threatening to murder Xinyun by saying that he would do so. As a result of Balrog's strong flame, all of the summoned skeletons were destroyed, and Kang was able to see that he was a different foe from those he had fought in the past. Because he was unable to vanquish the Balrog with the might of his mana alone, he is forced to let go of all of his power in order to achieve victory, since he has no other option. After that, he placed his palm on the ground and let out an energy in the form of white light. In an instant, Quack Jusan, who was using a vampire lord, as well as Gong's son Chu, who was a basilisk, the flying salamander that he obtained on Mount Tianmu, Miwal Hua, who was the dragon flowering fire, and Yuil Lang, the skeleton peak swordsman, appeared before him. However, it appears like Kang was having some difficulty because he used up all of his energy to summon those undead. In addition to this, he uses his ability, the Divine Spirits and Rightful People, which causes a spike in his energy that affects even the undead he has conjured. Furthermore, he commands those summoned undead to make an all-out war towards Balrog. Go, he added. After that, all the undead rush towards Balrog and use all their might to strike the monster, but it seems Balrog can engage in combat with them simultaneously. Kang was having problems breathing because he cast a spell that boosts a target's resistance to fire, but requires a significantly higher amount of mana than is required. It's possible that if they lost at that moment, that would be the end of them. However, he held out hope that all of the summoned undead would battle with all of their might because it was a matter of life and death for them all. He was taken aback by the fact that the most skilled swordsman was still on his side and appeared concerned for him. Because of this, he turned to the elite swordsman and informed him that he was alright, and that they should go help the undead fight against Balrog. He gripped his blade tightly as they both charged forward in the direction of the beast. Afterwards, they both strike at the monster at the same time. Huak Jusan uses his blade veil, while Wal Hui uses his countless mines. Basilisk relies on its strength to fight, and Xin Wun uses his blade veil. If they keep attacking like that, there is a possibility that they will end up winning the match. But his eyes widened in amazement as the Balrog let off a massive volume of flame that consumed all of the undead that Kang had summoned. He was fortunate enough to evade the blow, but it appears that he was starting to lose strength since he unleashed all of his power and launched a full-scale assault when he summoned those zombies. There was not a single summons that was not lying motionless on the ground. He was aggravated by the fact that he was unable to triumph over Yomchen Seok. He has no choice but to keep fighting. He has nothing to lose and will do so until the very end. While he kept his gaze fixed on the Balrog, he clenched his teeth. On the other hand, a status window pops up and notifies him that the hidden requirement Unbending will has been fulfilled. Additionally, the information on the secret quest One Who Chases Chaos has been updated, and the quest's grade has completed calibrating as a X grade. This is good news. The clear condition of the hidden quest One Who Chases Chaos has been altered to require that the player vanquish all 8 unknown disasters, despite the fact that you have the title Chaos Pursuer automatically equipped. It was also mentioned in the status window that the effect of the title Chaos Pursuer had been triggered, and that within 24 hours, all of the damage that had been dealt in combat would be entirely repaired as a result of the impact of the title. Whenever he engages in combat with a subject of chaos, 200 points will be subtracted from each of his stats. Although a portion of the power of the unknown will be imbued into the body of the awakened as a result of the effect of the title, the awakened will experience a significant reduction in their skills. Kang was taken aback by the news that all of the power he had acquired would be revoked. As his veins became visible, he clenched his teeth in frustration because his control over Xin Wun's body and spirit was beginning to slip away. If his self-control wavers for even the briefest of moments, he has the uncanny feeling that it will vanish entirely. But even if it were God, that wouldn't be possible. He was so lost in his own thoughts that he failed to see that Balrog was coming closer to him, so he is at a loss for words and unable to complete his sentence. It's a good thing the peak swordsman is still alive because he managed to narrowly avoid the blow that was intended for Kang. He fixed his gaze on the peak swordsman who appeared to be straining since its feet were trembling, and as if he cannot hold anymore, but it had to protect Kang. However, the peak swordsman is able to avoid anything Balrog throws at him in a form of light. Kang, on the other hand, appears to be frozen in emptiness, almost as if he were noticing something. Then, all of a sudden, a smile appears on Kang's face, and both Balrog and the peak swordsman gaze at him and was astonished when the body of Kang suddenly emits a large amount of yellow light. After that, the status window appeared and claimed that Kang had totally absorbed the powers of the unknown as the will of unknown is perturbed. It also stated that the scythe of melting poison had largely absorbed the power of the unknown and that its grade had increased to SS+. Based on the posture of Kang and the energy that was releasing on his body, someone or something handed him power. Kang takes a glance in his hand, and all of his energy suddenly feels like they've been combined into one. He seems to have been given a new lease of life. However, he was still baffled as to where his unexpected vitality had come from. His yin mana, the kai that lies within his center kai, and the power that comes naturally to him are all converging to give him strength. Because of the mutual hostility between them, the three energies have never been able to combine. But he has the strange sensation that some unknown being is the one who gave him his abilities. Even though he doesn't know exactly who gave him power, he can't help but break out in a spontaneous grin. The experience hasn't quite erased the bitter taste it left in his mouth. However, for the time being, he will put that power to good use. Afterwards, he establishes his posture and makes it appear as though he is prepared to engage in a fight as a result of gaining power. On the other hand, when Balrog sees that Xin Wun appears to be regaining his energy, he becomes enraged and begins to release a large amount of force and is going to take an assault towards Xin Wun. The latter appears to be well prepared, which is why he even encourages Yomchen Seok to attack him. When the fist of Balrog was an inch away from the Beacon clan leader, and since he had already gained his power, he was now able to use the 12 swords of the Thundercloud and the scythe of melting poison. Then, he combined it with his fusion technique, and all of a sudden, he wielded his sword towards the one arm of the monster and cut it. And as a consequence of this, Balrog became furious due to the pain that he was experiencing as well as the fact that his arm had been sliced and had fallen to the ground. He quickly stops his strike and grips his remaining arm as though it will ease the pain. But the monster is still roaring at the leader of the Beacon clan as though it was saying something since the creature was still Yom Chinseok. Furthermore, Kang assured the beast that it was an exhilarating experience. After that, the leader of the Beacon clan was pondering what he should do next when he suddenly lifted his hand and used the skill White Wishes. As a consequence, Mi Wal Hua, the Peak Swordsman, the Basilisk, Quack Jusan, and the Flying Salamander were all brought back to life, and their bodies were all shining in yellow light just like Kang's due to the power that someone had lent him. On the other hand, the status window pops up and notifies him that the power of the unknown are being imbued into the summons, as well as the fact that the status of the summons has been increased. In addition, Barlog appears perplexed that Kang is actually capable of doing such things. Afterwards, Kang asked the monster whether he was shaking now, and the monster must have felt terror now that all of his summoned creatures had received their power along with his summons and himself. In other words, everything was over for Yom Xion, and as a direct result of this, the monster became furious. A significant amount of flame was released onto his body, and it appeared to be getting ready to attack once more. On the other hand, Kang issued an order for all of the summons to launch an assault against the monster. As soon as all of the summons heard Kang's command, they all dashed in the direction of the monster. Everyone put their utmost effort to vanquish the dreadful monsters, and they all attacked using the most effective technique they possessed. Even though the monster was emitting a large amount of flame, the summons weren't bothered by it because they were all protected by the power of their master, Kang. They continued to strike the monster until it failed to realize that the Peak Swordsman had suddenly jumped above him and was using its swords to fight against him. Unfortunately, by the time the monster noticed the Peak Swordsman, it was already too late, and the monster was unable to evade the attack of the Peak Swordsman because it seemed bewildered. As a consequence, the Peak Swordsman severed the monster's head. The skeleton seemed to have no compunction in severing the entire monster's body into pieces. "Wait for you friends in hell," uttered Kang. The status window suddenly appeared and stated that Kang has eliminated the disaster Balrog and he obtained a superior mana stone as a reward while his experience has reached its maximum. The status window also stated that Kang has leveled up and reached level 81. His attribute as a necromancy has reached rank SS+, and additional proficiency has been obtained for all necromancy-related skills while his skill, Skeleton Mastery, has reached rank SS+. Furthermore, the number of familiars that can be summoned simultaneously has increased to 130, and new summons have been added to the possessed familiars. The new skills, Execution Knight, Dullahan Mastery, Undead Infection, Domain of Nightmare, Soul Obedience, Grab Heart, and Chain Storm has been unlocked, and because of that, Kang obtained a new treasure which is 6 Soul Banner as a first clear reward. Kang also obtained a new treasure which is Black Demonic Flame Longsword as a first clear reward and the title Demonic Kingslayer for the first time. Kang looks bewildered when he stares into his hand, and then he lets out a sigh and realizes that he had been feeling incredibly exhausted now that the power that was lent on him by someone has vanished. However, all of the summoned had already slain the destructive monster Balrog. And what this implies is that someone is only going to offer Kang the power when he is ready to fight against the 8 disasters, and this leaves Kang with additional questions. However, he has to focus on his work at the time and won't give it any more thought until much later. He does this by first stepping on the monster's head, then raising his hand over it. An enormous fire completely destroyed a large number of homes, commercial organizations, and other structures in the place. People were yelling and trying to find assistance. However, everyone was surprised when the Kowloon group pounced on them and slaughtered everyone. A man who appears to be the leader in charge is yelling at his subordinates to kill all the individuals, and because of that, people were horrified, but they continued to hide and flee in an effort to get away from the pitiful occurrence. But the Kowloon group was all experienced and had weapons, so they were unable to get away from the catastrophe. The Kowloon group continued to use their swords as weapons of assault against defenseless individuals. Some of the victims suffered cuts to the head while others on their chest. Because they were killing those innocent individuals in order to buy more time for their boss, the leader in command appeared irritated as he clenched his teeth since he believed that their leader was not yet finished with what he was doing. However, by that time, a signal from their commander indicating that the installation had been finished should have been received, but until that moment there was none. But he thought that when he left their leader in order to carry out his orders, he had the unexpected impression that there could be something within. Afterwards, he turned around as he noticed something which caused him to be surprised. He then furrowed his brow and clenched his teeth when he realized that Yaling and the entire troop of the embroidered uniform guards were already there. However, because it was so hot and the winds were blowing in their direction, Yao Lang abruptly took a step back. However, he quickly controlled himself and continued to walk towards the Kowloon group, who were being merciless and slicing their swords at a large number of innocent people. On the other hand, the troops of Kowloon all gathered together with the leader in charge and pointed their swords against the embroidered uniform guards. The leader in charge told himself to stay calm even though he seemed to be sweating in fear, because their numbers were greater than their enemy, and even though they were the embroidered uniform guards, they won't be able to. But he is unable to continue his train of thinking because his eyes suddenly widen in horror as Yao Liang unexpectedly pierces his blade and penetrates his body. After impaling the leader in charge with his weapon, Yao Liang appeared furious as he clenched his teeth and wrinkled his brows as he removed his weapon. As a direct result of Yao Liang's actions, the leader in command collapsed to the ground and was rendered unconscious. When the Kowloon groups discovered that their leader in charge had already been killed, they appeared to be in a state of complete and utter terror. Furthermore, all of Yao Liang's embroidered uniform guards were given the order to utterly destroy all of the Kowloon group's surviving forces. After that, all of the warriors from the Kowloon group and the embroidered uniform guards charged at one another in an attempt to engage in combat. They stabbed at their adversary with their swords, but considering that the uniform guards are more well known for their skill in martial arts, it's possible that they were able to prevail over the Kowloon group. In addition to this, Yao Liang made a beeline for Zhuge, who were standing still, and attempted to demolish the formation that Yomchen Siak had constructed. Zhuge appeared to be having trouble demolishing the formation, and despite the fact that he was trying his hardest, he did not appear to be making any headway in this endeavor. Zhuge explained to Yao Liang that it is not simple to destroy the formation since it is put together in such a complex way, and that it is impossible for him to do it using his power alone. Furthermore, because Zhuge was the only one who could break through the formation, Yao Liang begged him to stay for a little while longer. Zhuge was ready to say anything, but he was unable to do so because he observed something happen in the formation. Yao Liang also appeared to see what happened, which is why he immediately grabbed Zhuge and they both jumped when the formation suddenly erupted. Following that, when all of the embroidered uniform guards observed the massive explosion that had taken place, they were completely taken aback. They all widened their eyes, some of them even dropped their jaws, and instead of trying to figure out what was going on, they just stared blankly at the enormous blaze. Both Yao Liang and Zhuge were able to survive the explosion. Zhuge expressed his gratitude to the leader of the embroidered uniform guards, but when he turned his head to look at the location where the explosion took place, his jaw dropped in shock and couldn't able to continue his sentence. Even Yao Liang was unable to respond to Zhuge because he seemed dazed at the location. After the explosion, it was revealed that the location was the headquarters of the Kowloon group. Because of this, Yao Liang gave his soldiers the order to search the area carefully on the spur of the moment because they needed to determine whether or not Yomchen Siak was still alive. Afterwards, Yao Liang is aware of the odor of the explosion, and he verifies that the odors are unquestionably remnants of gunpowder. All of a sudden he wrinkled his brow when he learns that the odor could be that of the violent thunder bombs, and he was perplexed as to how these bombs could be at the Kowloon group headquarters, as such bombs are undoubtedly locked away in the treasury of the imperial palace due to the fact that they are extremely deadly. In addition to this, Yao Liang realized that there may be a traitor within the imperial palace. He grips his blade more securely than ever before. Furthermore, another one of his comrades yelled that they had already discovered the dead body of Yomchen Siak, so he hurried over there to look at it. According to the subordinates, Yomchen Siak was undoubtedly represented by the skeleton because it had the latter's skull, as well as traces of clothing and the black sky sword. Although the corpse was indeed the body of Yomchen Siak, he did not die as a result of the explosion, and that is the reason why Yao Liang was not convinced, since he noticed that the corpse was not simply burnt by the explosion. Rather, there are some visible traces of battle on the corpse, which means that someone broke through the formation and dealt with Yomchen Siak before they arrived. But Yao Liang's thoughts suddenly stopped when someone called his name. He was the provincial minister who was asking if he was injured. Why so seemed weak due to the explosion made by Dyung Ho because he was held carefully by the Beacon clan leader, and Yao Liang seemed startled when he saw Xin Woon. The following day, after Xin Woon had successfully taken down Yomchen Siak and an explosion had taken place that exposed their hiding spot, all of Zhejiang was thrown into complete anarchy. The Kowloon group, an important part of the chaos sect that had governed Zhejiang for decades, was eradicated at the hands of Yu Jialiang and the embroidered uniform guards. This victory marked the end of the chaos sect's reign in Zhejiang. Distribution of illegal substances and trafficking in people are among their many crimes. The atrocities that were performed by the Kowloon group, who were responsible for committing deeds that were considered to be heinous crimes throughout the Central Plains, infuriated the emperor, and he made the decision to put things right, despite the fact that it appeared to be too late to do so. The emperor gave orders to arrest all those associated with the unpardonable atrocities and put them to death. And because of that, Zhejiang had fallen into a vortex of chaos in the orders of the emperor. Whether large or small, the Mount Huang sect of the Chaos sect, which had connections to the Kowloon group, and several order sects associated with the Murim Union were hit as well. Afterwards, the emperor commanded the establishment of an organization to manage the martial artists of Zhejiang. Alongside rumors that the Beacon Commission clan would stand at its center was Liu Xinyun, and he was rising as the new ruler of Zhejiang. In the meantime, there was a gathering of people, but the blue light that surrounded them obscured their identities, and it appeared that they were conducting a meeting. Under the guise of Commander Li, the military director of the Blood Sect said that Yu Yaliang, wielder of the Azure Dragon Sword, was responsible for the obliteration of the Kowloon gang 3 days ago. After the spies were dispatched, it was verified that Commander T, who also happened to be Yom Chin-seok, was murdered. Even if Yu Yaliang were at the pinnacle of ascension, if Commander T had demonstrated the power of the blessing that the Blood Sect leader had given him, then it would have at the very least allowed him to escape an emergency situation. This was incomprehensible to a different individual who went by the alias of Commander Gan. Commander Li agrees with Commander Gan because that particular aspect seems fishy to him as well. After he investigated, it was confirmed that there were no traces of the blessing being used in the bodies of their comrades. Perhaps he chose not to display the powers of the blessing in the event that the identity of the sect could be revealed. Another person under the alias of Commander Gam commented that it seems Yom Chin-seok did at least one thing right before he died. It all makes sense because Yom Chin-seok's level without the blessing is about ascended middle rank, and he wouldn't have been able to defeat Yu Yaliang. Additionally, it was established that the clandestine prisons where the drugs and finances were concealed had been seized by an unknown character, and Yom Chioxian was solely responsible for bringing this on himself. But whatever happened, to imagine that the latter would conduct a foolish deed that set back the great will of the sect is ridiculous, and it is too soon to declare that the great will of the sect has been hindered. The animosity between the Chaos sect and the Murim Union has reached a new high after the destruction of the Kowloon group. Although both sides are maintaining their silence for the time being due to the Emperor's fury, the antagonism between them is like a dormant volcano that is about to erupt. However, if they were to stage an event that would cause it to break out, it is possible that they may hasten the conflict that has been predicted to occur between order and chaos. Furthermore, they are going to make an effort to prepare for the occasion that will investigate into the conflict. Another person approaches the group and inquires about the Azure Dragon Sword. They want to know whether or not they are planning to abandon Yaliang, who has the audacity to brandish his sword against the Blood Sect. Commander Li reassured him that the destruction of the Azure Dragon Sword was a part of his plan, and that he should not be concerned about it. However, it appears that there is another person that they need to keep an eye out for, and that someone was Liu Xinyun, who was a member of the Beacon Commission clan. Meanwhile, Xinyun is looking at the dry land that he purchased not too long ago, and it appears that both he and Sam are pleased with the purchase. Sam made the remark that all of the ground that was eroded by the landslide has become productive, and that whatever is grown on that area would result in a fruitful crop. Yes, you're right, uttered Xinyun. The latter spotted the seller who was standing behind him and seemed surprised when he saw the dry land that he purchased. The vendor couldn't believe that the dry land was now fertile because only a few days earlier, the property was covered with boulders and lots of dirt. Suddenly drawing near, he begged with the leader of the Beacon clan to buy back the land he had previously sold to him. When the leader of the Beacon clan asks the seller why he should sell it back, the seller responds by stating that farming in and of itself is a difficult endeavor, and he would pay twice as much for that type of land. The leader of the Beacon clan let out an unexpected laugh and promptly rejected the offer made by the seller. However, the seller is adamant about taking into consideration his offer. He explains that the former landowners are currently exerting pressure on him to return the land, and he knows that if he loses their favor, it will be the end for a broker like him. The vendor goes so far as to go on his knees and beseech the leader of the Beacon clan to give him another chance to buy the land. But the leader of the Beacon clan didn't change his mind and turned around to walk away. Just as he was about to go, however, he stopped and told the seller that he was not concerned with his business. "What about the time you sold this dirt cheap land to me at a much higher price?" he added. Then he calls Wang Sam so that they can leave the place. The seller wanted to say more, but the Beacon clan leader ignored him. Afterwards, Xin-Woon and Wang Sam were riding in their carriage when it unexpectedly came to a stop in front of the store that sold agricultural implements. Because Xin-Woon had some important business to attend to, he gave Sam the instruction to wait for him in the carriage. The latter, who was perplexed, asked him where he was going and whether or not he was going to get some more farming equipment. After explaining to Sam that he was going to get something new and that the conversation might be a little bit lengthy, Xin-Woon then left Sam very bewildered. When he entered the shop, he saw H1 Gongmang, who quickly greeted him, giving the impression that he had been waiting for him to arrive. "It seems heavenly luck has made a way for me," uttered Xin-Woon. The elderly man instructed him to go inside, where she would be waiting for him to arrive. Xin-Woon went through a specific door in order to reach the godmother who was waiting there. When Xin-Woon unlocked the door, he discovered the woman inside. The godmother immediately recognized him as Liu Xinyun, the clan leader of the Beacon Commission clan. The moment he stepped foot in the room, the godmother inquires to him in a startling manner where side he hails from. Xin-Woon's response of neither caused the lady to break into a spontaneous smile, and she speculated that the latter must have come from the demonic. But she is unable to continue since Xin-Woon cut her off mid-sentence by declaring that he was not a member of the demonic sect. "I am simply treading the path I've chosen," he added. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you love this manhwa. Have a good day.